Hello, hello.
Hello, this is Colin.
Hey, Mr. Colin. Mr. Colin, how are you?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good, 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 good. Good to see you. Everybody tap the live. I'm glad that you're here. And I'm filling in for one of my co-workers, one of my co-workers for tonight. She's on her spaceship, so she should be here in a second. But I'm going to fill in for her. My name is Sianka, and welcome into our vote counts. We have Mr. Colin McRoberts, who is running for House Representatives District 1 in Kansas. My first time ever speaking to anybody that's in Kansas. My first time. Welcome in, everybody. I'm on the naughty list right now because my computer decided to shut down and update itself. So we're going to do this kind of like a little remix here. So welcome in, everybody. Welcome to OVC. Mr. Collins, Mr. Collins, what do you want me to call you? Do you want me to call you Mr. Collins?
Just fine.
Collins? Yeah. Okay. Please tell us about yourself.
Sure. My name is Colin McRoberts. I am a candidate of the Democratic Party for the 1st District of Kansas. And I'm a first-time politician. It's still weird to hear myself say that I am a politician, but I guess I can't deny it now because I'm running for federal office. I decided to run for this office when you may have seen some video that went viral a while back of our Senator Roger Marshall, who just turned on his heel and walked out of a town hall because some local farmer in a small town in Kansas asked him a question he thought wasn't respectful enough. And the question was basically just, isn't it wrong to fire all these veterans we need for, what Kansas needs right now in federal service? And I drove back from that event about 4 hours home because Kansas is a pretty big state, one side to the other. And I kept thinking, how is it possible for a United States Senator to be that bad at his job? How could anybody be so incompetent they can't handle a question like that, even if they don't have a good answer? And I kept coming back to the same idea that it was just the safe elections over and over and over again. Safe elections make for weak politicians, guys who don't know what's needed, aren't willing to do it, are just unable to do the basic job. And the one thing I could do to fight back against that was to end one safe election in my lifetime. So if I could find in a district where I lived, which was one that had a candidate who just keeps running as the incumbent and never has a strong challenger, never has to compete for votes, never has to justify the things he does in office, if I could stand up and make that formerly safe election into a contested one, I'll be happy with the results no matter what happens at the ballot box, as long as nobody ever looks back at the 1st District and thinks this belongs to the GOP again.
Right. Wow. It's really amazing. Well, me being a first time really in depth in politics and seeing how various offices are being ran and people who are running for these different prestigious offices, they're not respecting the office and they're not respecting the people. They think this is a game and people are really, really in dire straits right now.
They treat it like their property, and for a lot of them it is in a way, because if the party controls the district completely, if it controls that election and they never have to worry about a challenger, the only thing they have to do to get reelected is please the party. And it doesn't matter if that vote they take is good for the district or good for the people or the community, only whether it pleases the people at the top of the party who are going to decide whether or not they get a primary challenger. And we've seen that incredibly obviously here in Kansas. And the tariffs have hit everybody really hard. It's just a terrible economic policy. economic policy. But here in Kansas, soybeans are one of the major economic pillars of the state, and the tariffs just hammered that out from underneath a ton of farmers. And it was incredibly obvious all along that the tariffs would do that, but it was also incredibly obvious that our GOP politicians would never stand up and say, this is wrong, this is a bad idea, this is chaos, because they don't need for Kansas farmers to be prosperous. They don't need for Kansas farmers to have health care. They just need the party to get them renominated. And so they do what works for the party. And it will until those elections are competitive again.
So do you feel that, my computer came back to life. So do you feel that it's more like political campaigns and political parties are like cliquish, where they have their cliques in it and have their own cliquish agenda to get through. Like their agendas, like
They can
okay,
be exclusive, right? Might be the best word for it, because the group that controls the district, and this isn't always going to be the Republicans, it'll be the Democrats in some districts, Republicans in some districts, as long as one party feels like it's got that district under control, because the people in that district will always vote for that party no matter who the best candidate is. They never have to think about what actually earns us that vote. And so that's really what we're running against more than anything else, is that perspective of people will vote for the party instead of the candidate. I happen to be a Democrat running in a Republican district, but frankly, I'd love to see Republicans running in Democratic districts that are run the same way, because once that district is competitive again, then we can start to break out of the straitjacket parties put us into and make candidates compete on the basis of what they've done in office, what they can do in office, what they're willing to stand up to. Otherwise, we get the effective result of a one-party rule, even with two parties in theory competing for those seats, because everyone is just really competing for renomination, at least in those safe districts.
absolutely. I'm not only just aware of the agendas, but I'm also aware of who they associate themselves with. And it seems like, like in school, like who you associate yourself with is like who you are, in a sense.
Yeah.
So if you hang around with people who just shuck and jive and don't give a care, then that's what you're representing. That's what you want. In a sense, do you believe that to be true in the political world?
Absolutely. I mean, the guy I'm running against right now, the incumbent in the seat, has always sort of drafted into safe elections because he's in good with the party. And it's those party connections that are going to keep him probably in the seat for a long time to come, unless we manage to turn it right now with the blue wave, because he knows not his neighbors, not his community, not the state, but the people in state government and the people in the federal government and the people in the party who are most connected to the levers that move that election. And that's the clique, that's the small group that's actually determining how he votes. And right now in the Republican Party, and this changes from election to election, but right now it's largely about what makes Donald Trump happy. And if it makes Donald Trump happy, then a Republican politician who doesn't want a primary needs to support it. And we see the results, which is a wave of corruption, of incompetence, of illegal things happening in the federal government. And nobody with their head screwed on straight expects any national Republican to stand up and say boo about it, because how could they possibly? It'll disappoint the party, and that's what determines whether they get renominated again. If they were afraid of coming back to their districts and facing hard questions, maybe that would change. But that raises the question of how do you make that happen in the first place, which is why I'm standing right now on a cold winter day in the middle of Abilene, Kansas, a couple hours from my front door, because you just got to drive this district and meet as many people as possible and go to as many parties and events. And after this, I'll go to the Abilene, Kansas Democratic Party, the party for the Democratic Party, for the holiday party. But then I'm going to go to chambers of commerce and talk to Republicans, and I'm going to go to universities and talk to professors, and I'm going to go to ag halls and talk to farmers, and I'm going to go to as many different places as possible. And ideally, it remains to be seen how much of this I can do, but I want to spend more time talking to Republicans than to Democrats, because Democrats will respond to that party identity and vote for the D no matter who, vote blue no matter who. What I need to do is go talk to Republicans and convince them you can vote D to make a difference. Right? Do you feel like things are going well in your life right now? Do you feel like this is the way it's supposed to be? I know you want to vote for the same people you've always voted for. I know your party is your tribe, and I know that means a lot to you, but it doesn't have to be. You could stretch out of that. You could break out of that and stand up and do what you think is best for the community, and we'll see how well that resonates. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, but I think it's a message we can run with.
Oh my gosh, Colin, this is like the first time I've ever heard someone who is running in a Democratic race, and they're going into the lion's den, to talk to them and be like, hey, it's okay to vote for this person that's different. Doesn't mean that you're less than or that, you're a sellout or anything. These are policy driven people. These are the people that want to do something for you and your community, and wow, you know what? I have to clap for you. I
Thank you.
never heard
And
of
it helps that it's such a tough seat. I mean, this is a tough race. The last
Yes.
Democratic candidate lost by 40 points, and we look at 5 points as a blowout in these days. Now, that was in the presidential election year. We're going to see a much different result right now with the blue wave coming. It's a winnable race right now, which it hasn't been for 100 years in the first district. But it's still going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time. And one of the things that makes it possible is it is a rural district. And so I'm talking essentially to farmers and people dependent on the farm economy, and they see the impact of those policies very directly. Tariffs for a lot of people has made things more expensive, has made affordability worse for them slowly over the course of the year. For a lot of farmers, they have a harvest. And when they harvest, they need to sell what they just harvested. And for soybean farmers especially, it used to be China. And then China just up and said, no, your tariffs are insane, retaliatory trade war, no soybeans. And so the economic underpinnings just got knocked out from under these farmers. They see the impact. And they know what it's doing to them. And they look at the handout that's coming because Trump is trying to buy back these voters. And it goes back just the culture of Kansas and the culture of these rural voters. They don't want to farm for a government check. They want to farm to a market. They want to sell. They want to make something that's sustainable over time because that's the only way you can run a farm over time. And they know that's not what they're getting right now. A lot of them still want to vote Republican because they always have. Their parents always did. And that's a really hard thing to bust up. But they've seen the impact. And so what I've been telling people is nobody does a better job of convincing people that they need to change than Donald Trump has, than our senators and our representatives have, because they're the ones bringing that damage and that pain home. And that's what's going to persuade people that it's time for a change.
Absolutely. Wow. You are amazing. So I got my computer up. We're going to do this again. We'll do this introduction again. Sorry about that. So hi, everyone. Welcome to Our Vote Counts. TikTok Live Town Hall. I am your moderator filling in for Melanie. My name is Sianka. So Our Vote Counts, which is also known as OVC, a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard through education, outreach, accountability, and action. We're building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. So join us. Your vote is your power. So tonight we're joined with Mr. Colin McRoberts, also known as Colin. I get to call him Colin, so I feel special. Candidate of Kansas, U.S. House Representative, District 1. We're gonna like break things up a bit. So, what's more stressful, Kansas traffic or farming, or like what is in Kansas? Like tell us about Kansas.
So the first district runs almost 5 hours from one side to the other. And it's a bunch of rural farming communities. It's a couple of big college towns. And that's where I am. I'm in Lawrence, Kansas. Not today, right now. I'm out on the road campaigning right now. But my day job is Lawrence, Kansas, where I'm a professor at the University of Kansas in the School of Business. So what's stressful for me is final exams. And it's the same thing my students are going through, because I just gave my students a bunch of final exams in business law and negotiation, which is the stuff I teach and the stuff I'm going out on the trail with. I mean, that's what I want to bring to Congress, is respect for law and decent negotiations. And so, any of my students are on here, just know that I am working in the background. I'm going to go home and grade tonight. Don't worry about it.
And OVC says Dorothy is in Kansas. Is it true that Dorothy is in Kansas? You
know what I always think of is Superman, because I'm just that nerd. And so for me, it's Clark Kent. And this is where he landed, because this is America, right?
Yes, absolutely. I forgot about Superman. Yes, I forgot about that.
Everybody always does.
Because we don't automatically go to that. We automatically go to Wizard of Oz, Dorothy.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm too old to understand, first of all, TikTok, or second of all, be into Wicked. I'm too young to have done the original Wizard of Oz movie, so I'm right in that gap where Wizard of Oz doesn't speak to me, but Superman always will. I actually just published a book article, because I'm an academic. I can't afford to quit my day job. I'm running while I'm teaching and writing full time. I just published an article in a book about sort of how we can respond to conspiracy theories, which is one of the things I see really affecting us all in politics and our daily lives. And what I wrote about was this amazing episode back in the 40s when the writers of the Superman radio serial made sure to make the Ku Klux Klan one of the villains in the serial so that people who weren't aware of how evil the Klan was could hear about what it did and what it was like. And they used that power of media to reach out and talk to people and convince them of what the danger was around them. And that's an amazing thing. And that's, kind of the power of those stories. Not politics at all. I shouldn't derail us. Sorry about that.
No,
But I get
no, you're
enthusiastic
good.
and geeky
No,
about my writing.
not at all. This is why we do these town halls, because it's getting away from the tradition, kind of boring, type thing. We want to know more about you because it's now about the people. The people want to know if you're real. People want to know if you live everyday life. Are you related to it? So just by having this conversation, it's fine. But one thing about TikTok, they have their vocabulary list of what we can't use, like the triple K.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. The triple K, you can't use the abort. You got to use AB. You got to use unalive. You got to use weapons or pew pew, things of that nature. So just to give you a heads up on what TikTok is really about.
I appreciate that. I'm not up there with Nancy Pelosi, but I'm not the TikTok generation. So this is one of the things I've got to learn to be able to campaign. And, it's a rural district. And so a lot of our media is going to be more Facebook and, frankly, radio, terrestrial radio, satellite radio. But we're hitting all those different media channels as hard as we can. And I made sure when I hired my campaign staff, and my campaign manager is right out of college. Most of my volunteers are right out of college or in college still. Because one of our strategic goals for this campaign is whether or not we win the seat, whether or not I go to Congress, this will be a more competitive district after I'm done with it, which means we have to leave behind a system that is better at winning elections, organize some of the unorganized counties, leave behind volunteers, campaign managers, people who are qualified to go run for themselves, help somebody else run. Nobody is ever going to look at the first district again and think this belongs to the GOP. This belongs to the people of Kansas, and they can vote for whoever they damn well please.
Absolutely. So Colin Roberts is an attorney, a professional negotiator. Wow. Okay. An associate teacher and professor at the University of Kansas School of Business, which you had mentioned before. And you teach business law and negotiation. Originally from outside Kansas, you chose the state as the place to build your career and raise your family, working alongside your wife as an educator and a community advocate. What is it like to work with your wife in that, community advocate? Do you have to behave yourself, or you're on your best behavior?
So we're both professors at KU. That's why I say I work with her. And she's in anthropology and I'm in business. And so we've got pretty different environments. She's up the hill, we say. So she's about a 10-minute walk away, and a much older building with not quite the nice amenities the business school has. So she likes to come down sometimes, get a cup of coffee with me, and enjoy the nice B school building. But we get a chance to, commute into work sometimes. I ride my bike to work when I can. I love that small town life, and I love the chance to just work on a college campus. I tell people it's kind of weird because I don't know anybody. I honestly don't know a single person who loves their job more than I do. So why the hell am I running for something else and trying to go to Congress? And, part of it is I know what the odds are. I know I'm probably not going to Congress, but if I do, it's because this was important and this was winnable and it had to be won and it was worth it. So,
Absolutely.
One way or the other, next year is going to be a great year for us because both outcomes are fantastic.
Yes, and OVC wants to know what kind of negotiator, because I thought of the movie too, OVC, with Sam Neill as a negotiator. So is it kind of like that? As a negotiator?
So I actually just had some of my students do presentations, and most of them do a presentation about, this merger negotiation, the acquisition, or ethics negotiation. But every semester I've got some students who do hostage negotiations, and they break down a hostage situation and talk about those negotiations. So I actually spent the afternoon talking to some students about hostage negotiation for Lufthansa Flight 181 way back in the 70s, which was this amazing story and more or less mostly kind of a happy ending, but a rough situation. Yeah. And most of what I teach is business negotiations. That's what I did for a long time. So I was a trial lawyer at first, and then frankly just hated it. Didn't like fighting every day to make that money, and had a fantastic opportunity. It was actually when I met my wife, because she's a scientist, and we had to move around the country for her job and her postdocs. And so I went into a business career, and I just traveled the world for the next, 6 or 7 years, helping people negotiate, teaching negotiation, advising on negotiations. I think I worked in 25 or 26 countries around the world. And then we came to Kansas to start our family. We had a choice of where to go, and Kansas was the place for us. And I kind of transitioned to the university so I could, put my feet in one place instead of being on a plane all the time. And so these days I do more teaching and negotiation than actually being in that chamber. But I am one of the negotiators for UAKU, the union that's bargaining for KU faculty. And, we're in there trying to maintain the rights of the faculty and maintain the independence of the university, our academic freedom, our ability to teach things that matter. And that's one of the things I'm running for, too, is just to remind people in Kansas of why the universities matter so much, because so much of that is being knocked out from under us, too. I mean, mostly we see it in the sciences, clinical trials being canceled, people who need cancer medications losing access to it because somebody saw a cancer trial for diverse treatments for renal cancers and they think, oh, diversity is bad, and they cancel those grants. It's just incompetence, and it's just maliciousness. And it's one of the things we have to do is just send that message. Win or lose the election, this is a fantastic opportunity to talk to everybody in the state and say, no, this matters. The research that universities do puts food on the table, cures diseases, teaches us about the past. And to lose that for party politics of all things is just disgusting. And so, again, I'm ranting a little bit, getting off script, I apologize, but it matters so much to me that somebody stands up and says, no, you know what, education is good. Yes. It's good that we train the world in American values, American sciences. We want those students from every corner of the world because it makes us stronger, makes us smarter, makes us better, richer, happier. It's just good, and we're losing it for the dumbest reasons.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to remind the people in the comments, if you can look up there, you see the heart, do your heart me for OVC. And if you have any questions for Mr. Colin, I want to say Mr. McCollum, that's not your name, but Mr. Colin, you can request up to talk to him face to face on your camera, or you can put your question in the comments, but please be respectful. And we're going to have some fun here. So I see that your policies and priorities and platform focus is lower cost of living, strengthen agriculture and rural economies, right to repair. Is that like for farmers and small businesses that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, restore science and medical research funding, workers' rights and fair labor practices, support public education and academic freedom, protect personal freedoms and civil rights, effective public safety, and humane immigration policies. Okay, so we're going to start with economic development. So many small towns in the first district are seeing long-standing Main Street businesses close because of rising costs, limited foot traffic, and competition from large retailers. What specific solutions would you bring to Congress to help revive small town businesses, corridors, and support local entrepreneurs?
Yes, absolutely. And you're going to hear this from probably a lot of politicians this year, but the number one thing we're talking about is affordability, because it's the number one problem everyone raises to us. And a lot of that is maintaining the affordability of those small towns through those small businesses. And there's a couple of ways I want to do that. The first and the most obvious and the most important is shut down the tariff regime that is causing economic chaos. And ideally, the best way to do that is just to take the tariff power away from the president. Not just this president, but all presidents, because it's being used in ways that wind up undermining those American businesses and making life unbelievably, unsustainably expensive. But more specifically, one idea that I really want to take to Congress and work on really in a detailed way, and it's going to take a lot of work to make this practical, is to specifically provide a small business exemption to tariffs. Because we are always going to have some tariffs. There is a role for tariffs and some of that economic policy, but it's always going to have a disproportionate impact on small businesses, small farmers, people like that. One of the ways we can deal with that is by simply speaking directly to it and saying, for those particular types of businesses that are most impacted, for farm equipment importers, for small family businesses, for family farms, things like that, you get a special tariff exemption. The details and how that works are going to take a lot of time and a lot of work to figure out, because there's just a lot of background paperwork that goes into how do you actually make that practical, but it's a solvable problem. And it's one thing we can do to make it more competitive for those small businesses, to give them an advantage so they can fight down some of those bigger operators. And a great model for that, frankly, and people outside Kansas won't know this name, but there's a bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas called Raven. And Raven is a model. They've done amazing work in standing up to Amazon and just staying in business despite all the pressure they get in a college town from Amazon books. And they've done it by, community ties, community presence. And we want to make sure those businesses have a fighting chance to stay in power.
Absolutely. That's an amazing answer. And I totally agree. I see a glare on my glass. Probably people are like, oh, we can't see your face. I'm going to take my glasses off. It's a glare. So farmers and manufacturers across the district say they cannot find enough workers, and we know why, especially in skilled trades and agriculture. So what policies would you support to strengthen the local workforce and ensure rural employees and the employers can hire and retain the people they need?
That's a particularly tough question because the first district has both industrial bases, this huge agricultural base, educational bases, and there's different answers for each one of them. But we can bring it down basically to we want to maintain a diversity of the economy. We don't want to be stuck on any one individual support. We need those different economic bases, which means we need to support especially trade schools and skilled labor so that we've got that ability for people to support manufacturers and they want to move in, and we want to try and diversify those towns that are kind of shrinking and dying because they're losing a lot of the work base. And one of the reasons they're losing that work base is this idea of consolidation in agriculture. With technology, it's just getting much, much easier for what used to be 4 or 5 small family farms to become one big corporate farm. And these days, this isn't true of every operation, but especially the big operations, they are unbelievably technologically sophisticated. I was at a farm earlier this year, and every single seeder, every single harvester, every combine is self-driving. They've still got a person in the cockpit in case they run into problems, but they don't really need that person. So, where are they going to move out? And when they move out, they take their spouses, their families with them. The school loses people, the hospital loses people, the diner loses people, and the town starts to shrink, and it becomes less attractive for other businesses to move in. So economic development largely means finding other things for those businesses to do, other reasons to move to those towns. And some of that is a state government issue, but the federal government can do a lot to support it. And one of the things the federal government can do to support it is rational, sane, humane immigration policies. And this is something that's been so weaponized, especially by the far right. But one thing I've been telling people in Kansas is, make a list of the biggest problems you think our district has. Is it too many people? Is it overpopulation? No, the problem we're seeing in Kansas is these towns are drying up because there's not enough people. There's not enough businesses. Our restaurants, our libraries, our hospitals don't have enough people working there or patronizing them. We should be encouraging legal immigration to support that workforce, to bring in the entrepreneurs, to bring in the tax base, to build out the population that, again, will support those businesses because business goes where the people are.
Absolutely. And it's so true about how farmers are so technical. I just found out not too long ago at another town hall, I forgot who we were talking to, and they use Bluetooth. They use, they have to have broadband to operate their vehicles, operate different machinery. I'm like, huh, what? I'm used to the old school. I'm in North Carolina, so I'm used to the old school. Like I see a tractor, see somebody in it. I didn't think of,
a real world example is you used to have the pivots, those big irrigation systems that spin around and make the circles in the crops. It used to be a guy's job to just drive out there and turn the pivot on and off when it was time to run the irrigation system.
Yep.
Well, nowadays, as long as you've got a signal, as long as you've got some kind of connectivity, that's all run from a command station in the farmhouse. If the operation is, technologically sophisticated enough, some of them are, some of them aren't, but increasingly most of them are. And they're just getting bought out by bigger operations. And so the profits then flow to the large corporate operations, and it's just starving out the family operators, which again, that's when we support the economic development, is maintaining the diversity of those small operators. So you've got lots of operators, lots of growers in the region instead of just a few major, huge corporate operations.
Absolutely. And when I see those irrigation systems, it was a bad experience. I'm a disabled veteran, so it was a bad experience when I see it. If I had time later on, I would tell you about my bad experience.
Catch up with me afterwards. I want to hear it.
Okay, so we're gonna go. Since it's only me, we're gonna do like 2 questions out of each category. So we're gonna go to the next category of healthcare and women's health. So there are several rural hospitals in Western Kansas. They're struggling financially or have already closed. forcing families to travel hours for emergency or maternal care. What solutions would you support to keep rural hospitals open and ensure women in the first district have access to timely local medical services?
Stabilize healthcare. More than anything else, the chaos we're seeing and how the healthcare system works makes it almost impossible for those hospitals to keep up. They don't know from year to year where the money is coming from, whether the money will keep coming, how to keep paying for those patients. Medicare and Medicaid are increasingly under threat, and they need to know that they can stay in operation because hospitals are businesses, and businesses thrive on predictability, regularity. And so we need some kind of Medicare compromise, Medicaid compromise, that is just going to keep those hospitals in operation by knowing they can stay operating and keep the lights on. That's a lot easier said than done. What that's going to look like, nobody knows in the long term, but in the medium term and the short term, that means maintaining Obamacare subsidies. The shutdown was hard for a lot of people, and I really respect Sharice Davids, our Democratic Congresswoman in the 3rd District, who just forsook her own, without her own paycheck, out of sympathy for the people who were going without because of the shutdown, because it really hit people hard. But I think it was necessary because there's not much else we can do to really underline how critical it is to maintain those subsidies. We're starting to see insurance rates skyrocket. We're going to see a lot of people lose their insurance because of it. And these hospitals just cannot stay in business without those insurance payments. And I don't think people in Kansas really realize how bad it can get once enough of those hospitals shut down. Like I said, I'm campaigning. I'm 2 hours from home right now, and that's a short drive by Kansas standards. If you're 4 hours away from a large hospital, you're just in trouble, especially if you're on a small family farm and you don't have someone to drive you. And we hear stories sometimes of somebody loses a foot in some terrible accident and they've got to get themselves to the hospital a couple hours away. That's going to be way more common going forwards. But specifically to your question about women's health care, that's obviously a huge issue as well. And one of the things I'm really proud of in Kansas is we had this fantastic vote a little while ago on Vote No. Right after the big cancellation of Roe versus Wade, Kansas Republicans tried to pass a constitutional amendment that would have really shut down access to reproductive health care for women. And Kansas Dems stood up and organized a Vote No campaign that really a lot of people did not think would go the distance because it's Kansas. It's a red state, and everyone kind of assumed, well, Republicans will get what they want here. No, they lost hard on Vote No. And we managed to protect that reproductive health care in a huge way, even in districts like mine, which is very Republican. That Vote No campaign, which was the campaign to support access to reproductive health care, it won because Kansans looked at what they were trying to do and just said, hey, this isn't right. This isn't for us. Even if I personally don't like abortion, that doesn't mean that I need to take away health care from all of these women. And so it was a really strong message that I think scared the GOP in Kansas and gave a lot of hope to Kansas Dems that we can maintain that health care, not just for women, but for everybody, as long as we stand up and fight for it. But that's going to be the next step, is maintaining that fight because it never stops.
Exactly. And I think we all into that stigma when we see the map of the United States and we automatically pick, oh, they're Republicans. So it's just like, oh, whatever. They're going to, just like South Carolina, one of them, North Carolina, things of that nature. But when they break it down, like whoever broke down the Vote No in Kansas on a Democratic side, I'm like, hey, this is what it is. It's breaking it down for a newborn baby to understand. And I think that's what people have to do in general when they're doing campaigns. You can't just run off like, okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, but what is this? You got to break it down. So, Kansas, thank you.
Communication strategy, electoral strategy, and organization.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So another question for you is, many counties in the district have no OBGYNs or women's health specialists, leaving expecting mothers with limited prenatal care options. So what policy would you advocate for to increase access to women's health care providers in underserved rural areas?
There's a couple of things we can do on that. One is relatively inexpensive and easy, not the most effective, but it's better than nothing, and that's increasing telehealth funding. which means we've got to increase the rollout of broadband to make sure the services are there to make it possible. And I don't want that to be the only or even the primary line of healthcare for most women in Kansas, but at least it provides a kind of a safety net. If nothing else, we can provide telehealth. Better than that, though, would be healthcare centers maintaining the stability of those hospitals and keeping the doctors in those hospitals, first of all, by restoring strength to the university system. So we're graduating doctors who are talented, who are trained, who are qualified, and they're going to have student debt. And one of the ways we keep doctors in rural communities is we forgive that student debt for doctors who serve a significant amount of time in rural communities. I was talking just yesterday with a guy named Don Coover, who's a veterinarian running in the 2nd District, not far from me. And he's got, a vet clinic where they do a lot of insemination work for cows. And a lot of the people in his clinic are people who graduated vet school with huge debt, and they're working in very small communities to get that debt waived. Those programs already exist, but we can strengthen them. And we can strengthen them both by improving the funding for them, but also by making sure the university system is stable and we're producing people to go into that system who are willing to work in those places.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And OVC has stated that Medicare just cut telehealth. So most offices in various areas are not doing that now. And I used to work in telehealth in Minneapolis and in Massachusetts. And I love it. I love it so much. And it's such a help. It's such a big help.
And for preventative care especially, it can do so much.
Yes.
But we've got to maintain also the hospitals for those cases in which telehealth, it's not going to stop the bleeding. And we need to make sure there's something more emergent for it.
Absolutely. So one more question in healthcare, because this is very interesting. So since Kansas has become a regional access point for reproductive care, clinics in the district are overwhelmed and facing political pressure. What is your plan to protect women's health rights, ensure patient privacy, and maintain safe legal access to reproductive care in Kansas?
We have to fall back primarily on that Vote No campaign, because I think that's a touch point for a lot of people in Kansas. A lot of those issues are ultimately going to have to come down to the state government, and we have to remind the people of Kansas they voted no to the amendment that was going to take that health care away, why they voted no, and show that the people who are leading the state still care about it and still protect those values. I can't give you a single policy that's going to achieve all those goals. I wish to God I could. I have no idea what it would be. But I can say what we do primarily is we stand up and we tell voters we support women's right to choose, and we support that reproductive health care, that freedom. We don't want to get into a position where Democrats are afraid to say that because they think they need to reach out to Republicans by giving up on those core values. We can't do that. We don't respond to that pressure by giving up on our values. We help lead by showing what those values are and protecting them when we can, how we can. And so the fundamental answer is we maintain our open support for that reproductive health care freedom.
Absolutely. I totally agree. You got to keep pushing. You can't just stop there. When you get there, you got to keep going.
Forever.
So there's a question by Thick. Yoli, any plans specifically to address the Black maternal mortality rates?
Whoa, that is a good question. I've got to be honest, no, it's not something that specifically has occurred to me because I've been focused on just kind of the general healthcare issues. That's more of a detailed question than I've really thought about so far, but clearly it's something I need to pay attention to, and I will going forwards. That and also something that happens a lot in Kansas are Native rights also and Native healthcare issues. And that's a similar issue. The maternal mortality can be horrific in a lot of those Native communities and for a lot of the same reasons. And so this, again, I think reaches out to the need for those healthcare centers and the availability of that healthcare and the affordability of healthcare for all Kansans. I'm just kind of giving you general answers because I apologize. I don't have a specific one, but I should. And that's something I'll work on going forwards.
Absolutely. And thank you for being honest on that. If you have any in the chat, if you have any questions about healthcare, please come up, or you can put your questions in the chat, and the moderators will make sure to give my attention so I can see your question, and Mr. Colin here can answer your question. Till then, we're going to move on to public education in schools, which is one of my favorite topics as well. So many school districts in Western and Central Kansas are facing severe teacher shortages. That's like everywhere, even here in North Carolina. And it's forcing schools to combine classes or hire long-term substitutes, what solutions would you support to help rural districts recruit and retain quality teachers?
Couple of things. One that I just saw recently, and this is a state government initiative, but it's one that I support, and it's an example of the kind of policy I want to see, is they're making efforts to make it easier for retired teachers to get back into the classroom when there's a critical short-term need. So they need substitutes, they need someone to cover a semester, for example. Those retired teachers will be able to swing back into the classroom, and their retirement doesn't pause because of it. They maintain their pension, they maintain their retirement benefits. It doesn't cause the same kinds of legal difficulty as it used to. So things like that to maintain some fluidity in the work supply for the teachers. But beyond that, I think we've got to increase teacher pay, and we've got to increase the availability of teachers, again, by improving the university system and strengthening it. But then also, we need a Department of Education. We need to make sure there's federal support for those standards. The Department of Education kind of maintains minimum standards, right? It's not reaching into everybody's classroom and dictating exactly what they teach and exactly how they teach it. It's making sure that minimum standards are met, particularly in special education, which is where we see a huge growth in demand for services. And to shut down the Department of Education now of all times is, again, and I made this point earlier, just disgusting. But it's something we can do to maintain it, because one of the reasons I think people are less willing to go into a classroom right now is they see chaos and they see uncertainty, and they don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage. They don't know how they're going to retire. They don't know what the tomorrow looks like, because they just keep getting poked at over and over and over again by a government that at best doesn't care, and at worst is actively trying to destroy their school and their career. And so the thing we can do more than anything else to improve that situation in the long term is return stability to the system and professionalism to the system and to the Department of Education itself.
I totally agree, because out here in North Carolina, I live in Hope County. Cumberland County is like right across the line here in Fayetteville, and people are like complaining. Well, not people, but some parents are complaining about, that their children not learning, or their children doing this, or the teachers are doing that. I'm like, well, you gotta equip the teachers, pay them, supply their needs, what they need. I guarantee.
I'm a business guy. I teach in a business school. That's going to be my answer to a lot of things is you pay people for what you want.
Right.
You pay people to do the thing that needs to be done. So improving teacher pay, absolutely.
Yes.
But that's a lot easier said than done.
Right.
And so one of the things we can do is, make the quality of teaching, the quality of life better for teachers,
Yes.
in addition to that higher salary, because you can't buy somebody into a burning building, right?
Right.
You got to both make sure it's a job that's sustainable, that's livable, and then pay them fairly for doing it.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
labor is one way of doing that. So unions and supporting unionized teaching organizations is one way to making sure teachers have the power themselves. They're not dependent just on the government to do it for them. They've got the power to organize and negotiate for their own conditions, and providing that kind of support to them also.
Absolutely. This is another thing. Several communities in the first district have aging school buildings with outdated HVAC systems. Same thing here in North Carolina. Limited technology or unsafe structures, but struggle to afford upgrades. What policies would you back to ensure rural schools receive the federal support they need for safe, modern learning environments?
So in addition to what I was just saying, and again, we need a Department of Education, we need some federal support for the concept of education so that people understand why this matters. Beyond that, I'm going to link this to housing and say one of the things that makes that kind of maintenance work affordable is the same kind of thing that's going to make housing more affordable, which is we improve the availability of the equipment and the availability of the supplies, which means we stop tariffing the things that we need for that maintenance work, and we stop harassing the people who are willing to do that work, which means, again, we support the labor organizations that are doing that work, and we return to an immigration compromise that's going to return people to the communities who are doing the work in the first place. So it's a combination of different policies there. No single solution, unfortunately, but it's the same kind of economic stability that's going to bring back the ability to do that kind of maintenance in the first place. But going back to your point earlier, it just takes money more than anything else. Those schools need a budget, and the way the schools make their money, the way that money comes into the system is tax bases, which means we need the people in those districts making more money. So they are paying more in sales taxes, paying more in their levy, and the school district can, return its funding to normal levels.
Absolutely. The old school that my daughter goes to in Hope County High, and she's like, "Mom, it was so cold." I'm like, what do you mean what's so cold? She's like, it's like a trailer. It's like a, with no heater. And I'm like, what? Why are we paying these property taxes? Why are we paying all this money and you going into a dang on trailer in the class? It's just ridiculous. But that's another subject.
It's just the flip side of the affordability crisis, right? It's the
Right.
same thing that's hitting families. Those school districts also have to buy food for the lunchroom.
Right.
They've got to buy repairs. They've got to buy equipment. And by reducing those prices and by improving income, by improving the income of the families in the area, you can start to get a grip on that.
Absolutely. One more question. Many schools in the district lack on-site counselors. Same thing here in North Carolina. Psychologists or special education resources, leaving students' needs unmet. What steps would you take to expand mental health services and specialized support so every child in the first district can succeed in the classroom?
So on top of what we just talked about in terms of improving affordability of the services and the tax base, one thing that really strikes me particularly about special education teachers is so many of those professionals, and I want to say, I think it's pretty much every professional in the field of special education had their professionalism designations stripped from them by recent federal regulations, which makes their loans much more difficult to secure, which is going to put a hammer on those programs because it's going to be so much harder to go to school to do special education. And why on earth you would make life harder for the people who are working the hardest, for the people who need their help the most, is completely beyond me. But one thing we can do is stand up and recognize the work they do and how important it is by making it easier for them to go to school, easier to pay for that school, and easier to live up to the loan burdens once they're out of school. Because that's where special education gets its ability to help from, is from the people who are leaning in to do that work. They need our help more than anybody else, other than obviously the students who need their help.
Absolutely. And on top of that, children now are going through so much, in their life when they come from home. You don't know what they're going through coming from home, going to school, trying to learn, and they got to go right back to that unsafe place or whatever the situation is. Why do that? And it leads to this one question in the chat. Any policy ideas to address mass school pupilling? We've seen so many mass weaponry going on in schools, which it shouldn't be. You should be going there to learn. So any policies to prevent that and to address it?
God, I wish I had an answer that would work more than anything in the world. And I just don't have a solution to that I can throw out that's going to be meaningful. I can say that I think legislation to restrict the availability of weaponry just hasn't worked the way we wanted it to. Both because it's almost impossible to craft a legislative solution, but also because there is this incredibly active gun culture that is going to respond incredibly forcefully to any suggestion of actually limiting access to weaponry. Whatever the position somebody has on whether that legislation is a good idea or not, empirically, it just hasn't had the effect we wanted it to have. And I think the solution ultimately has to be a cultural solution. And I think one of the ways we build that is by building respect for the institution of the school in the first place, and that acknowledgement that this is a place for students to be safe, a place for students to find a community, and a care for that. It's not an easy solution. It's not an open and shut solution, but it's what we can do, I think, in the short and medium term. Long term, it's got to be that cultural shift.
Absolutely. It's
Sorry
really
about the train, guys.
No, you're good. You're good. I was like, oh. Absolutely. It's a sad situation. We gotta read every day or like every minute there's something, heinous as that going on. So we're gonna move on to public safety. So many rural sheriff's departments in the first district are struggling to hire and retain deputies, leading to slower response times in emergencies. What solutions would you support to help rural law enforcement agencies recruit, train, and keep qualified officers?
So here I actually have an easy solution, and it's not a perfect solution, but it's something we can do right away that's going to make a huge difference, which is scale back the unbelievably huge funding we're putting into ICE right now. ICE is bigger than the Marine Corps, and there is no rational reason for it to be that large. It is paying massive recruitment bonuses to candidates who are often completely unqualified for the job. So the qualified candidates are often coming out of sheriff's departments and small town police departments who see that they can make tens of thousands of dollars in a recruiting bonus. Of course they're going to go for that. Of course they're going to sign up for it. And they're going to wind up doing work that doesn't need to get done, chasing down immigrants who are not criminals, who have committed no crime against Americans. And in too many cases, they're going to be part of an organization, an institution that has a corrupt culture and has lost sight of its mission in the first place. By taking that funding away from ICE, we can store a little bit of tax money to the federal government and make it easier for those local police departments to retain people to do the job that they would rather be doing in the first place and that we would rather them be doing everywhere, all over the country. Really keeping Americans safe, not pretending for the sake of cable news.
Absolutely, because I'm like, well, why you have the police then? Why you have the FBI? Why you have the DEA? These are the people that can do this, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And it's
in
really
my background, before I went into academia, I studied a lot about conspiracy theories and irrational thinking and things like that. And so I've done a lot of research on how the FBI responds to domestic extremism, and the idea that we're losing funding for addressing domestic extremism because they want to put so much appearance of focusing on immigration is, again, it's a disgusting loss of priorities, loss of focus, because we're losing track of what actually keeps Americans safe. And those small town police departments are one of the first lines of defense against, real threats. And so the idea that we're poaching from them for, again, cable news is awful.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Local police and first responders report that mental health crisis and addiction issues are overwhelming. They're overwhelming their departments because there are too few treatment centers. The same thing here in North Carolina. It seems like we kind of like in a similar situation here. What policies would you push for to expand mental health and addiction services and reduce the strain on law enforcement?
So I'd go back again to the idea that people who are working in mental health, just like people who are working in special education, need the ability to pay their student loans. We need to increase the supply of people who have that expertise. But then separately, and this is something the federal government can do a lot about, but ultimately it comes down to state and local governments, we need to change the expectation that it's local cops who are responsible for calling out when somebody has a mental health crisis. There is obviously a role for armed police when there is an actual threat, but way too many of the tragic stories we hear are because police officers who are really trained and equipped to deal with violence are being called out to someone who is undergoing a mental health crisis, and they don't know how to deal with that. Or they have some idea, but they haven't really been trained for it. Or they are really focused on the possibility of violence, and they lean in the wrong direction because they have real threats they have to deal with. And it's hard to change gears from this guy is actually a threat to this guy is going through something and just needs some support right now. And so just increasing that willingness to understand that armed police are not the solution to every community issue is one of the things the federal government can lean in on. And again, we're seeing trending in the opposite direction, the constant drumbeat of fear and panic. Be afraid of your neighbor. Your neighbor wants to hurt you. They're conspiring against you. And it leads people to think that we need, a tank on every street corner to protect us from our neighbors. Yeah, sorry, that's not.
No, you're good. You're good. And if there were more social workers or that's in that field, mental health, that can be like you're a negotiator, have somebody there, like, hey, this is a mental, okay, have my 6, whatever, go in there and help take care of that,
And appreciate them, right? I mean, we lionize police officers. We turn them into community heroes. The social workers are also community heroes.
Right.
They just don't get the same recognition because it's not as visible. But the impact they have on people's lives is just as important. And it's so much harder in many cases.
Yes, you have them, utilize them, you have them.
And what I hear from police officers is, yes, do that. I don't think a police
Yeah,
officer would disagree with me how important those professionals are. They don't want to be called out for everybody having a mental health crisis. They want to be called
right,
out when somebody is needed with a gun or needed with EMT training and can do the job they're trained to do. They
right.
want that kind of multipolar approach. It's hard, though. And it's hard for local communities, even the ones who are trying to do the best job. This isn't an easy thing to do at all, but it's something we can lean into and appreciate and hold up and support because it's a local solution that needs to happen across the country.
Exactly. And it can be for them. You know, the social work can be for them when they come off the beat and the beat was like very hard. Like they was in a hard situation where somebody got unalive and they can't handle it. You got somebody right there, you know, to help them out. So it's a win-win situation, to me, but what do I know?
It's a solution that goes back, I think, also to the question earlier about what to do about school safety. Mental health is one of the
Yes.
solutions to that in the long run. So prioritizing it, talking about it, making sure that it's not stigmatized. So people who are seeing a
Right.
crisis coming in their own life or feeling it aren't afraid to mention it to their friends, their family, their neighbors, to a social worker, and those solutions are there. And that just ties back to healthcare. People worry about being able to pay for it. They worry about the consequences that they can't pay for it. So it's all tied together. Just a general issue of respect for our neighbors leads into healthcare, leads into education, leads into safety, leads into mental health. It's all connected.
Absolutely. And one more question. So some counties in western Kansas cover hundreds of square miles with only a handful of first responders. So what steps would you take to improve emergency medical service coverage so residents in remote areas aren't left waiting dangerously long for help? And I also have another question intel to that. I'll ask you that later. But do you have anything to cover those steps?
Yeah, I mean, geography is one of those things that we just can't do much about. Western Kansas is huge and it's not thickly populated and it's never going to be thickly populated because so much of it is devoted to agriculture. You just have, large fields, which are going to be keeping the population pretty widely distanced. So one of the ways we can deal with this is with telehealth. That's something. It's not great for emergencies, but it's better than nothing. We can help with air assistance. That's very expensive, but if we have a robust healthcare system, it's at least available and something we can look at for those emergency situations. But ultimately, what we need to have is a system of hubs, essentially. So there are more than just at the major hospitals. There are regional assistance centers, regional triage centers that can dispatch emergency care when needed. And frankly, I would take this back to the university system and say this is what universities are really good at, is studying how healthcare responds in problems like that, dealing with it, and incentivizing solutions to it. So I don't have an easy solution to that. That's an incredibly good and difficult question, but it's an area of ongoing study in addition to just make sure the hospitals don't go out of business. Because if nothing else, you've got to have that hospital there to take that ambulance in.
Right, absolutely. And on top of that, I was going to ask you about, well, is Kansas considered in tornado alley, a valley? So,
Yeah, tornadoes are, fortunately, this year has not been terrible. We certainly have had our history with horrible tornadoes. And it's one of the things I'm really worried about in the medium term is, FEMA is becoming this political dumping ground for loyalists who have no real expertise, no real understanding of the problem, just a way to do what the party and the president thinks looks good on the news at the moment. We were lucky to escape major tornadoes this year, but when they hit, I think we're going to see a real failure of the political leadership at the top of FEMA to respond to it.
absolutely. And I'm also worried because I know you heard about what happened in Texas with the emergency broadcast system that give that warning,
Oh,
you
God, yeah.
know?
My parents live very close to the flood zone, so we heard stories out of there, and it was
Yeah.
horrific. And the local community, the first responders did fantastic work doing what they could when they could. But at the end of the day, those local communities just can't afford all of the systems they need to keep everybody safe. There is a huge role for the federal government to step in with grants, with support, with technology, with experts, because it's a complicated world. And one of the roles the federal government has to play is maintaining public safety on that order.
And you actually answered my other question I was going to have about the rural police, fire, and EMS departments rely on outdated vehicles and communication systems. Like to me, that is so very important, especially in the area that you're in. You're in Kansas. You're like actually in the middle of the United States, and that's like an alley right there where tornadoes do touch down. And you need to
Yeah.
have those systems there for a reason, to get people to safety.
And
and
some of those systems are 50 years old. It's a siren that blows when the
right.
meteorologist sees the tornado coming, and that's great. That's very useful. But there's a huge role for federal assistance in making sure that everyone's cell phone goes off too, because I've talked to too
Hmm.
many people, even in Lawrence, my hometown, who just don't know what the siren means. They don't know what to do when it happens. We have technological solutions now that are better, but they need money to work. And that requires a stable, competent government to provide those services. And that is not something we're seeing all the time now.
Absolutely. I have one question here from Mr. Scott McLaughlin. Where is Colin from in Western Kansas?
So the district is the Western Kansas district. I'm actually from Lawrence right now, and Lawrence is the eastern side of that district. So it's if you open up Google Earth, the old app, it's actually the exact center of the country is Lawrence, Kansas. We used to be in a
Wow.
different district, and the GOP gerrymandered us into the first district to try and drown out those blue votes, and didn't realize what they were doing was putting a lot of energy into the first district that had been a very safe Republican district for a long time. So that's why you're seeing some Dem candidates coming out of Lawrence into the first district to talk to our neighbors, because it's all Kansas.
That's awesome. We have Miss Ayana up here. Hi, Miss Ayana. You have a question for Mr.
Hi,
Collins?
Bianca. Hi, Colin.
Hi.
I've been doing a little bit of research on your district, and apparently, well, this is the allegation that Tracy, what's his last name? Tracy Mann, the incumbent, is, how do I put this nicely, bought and paid for by the oil industry. Have you been approached by any of these PACs to who want to throw money at your campaign and say, "Hey, we want you to challenge him"? How do you plan on carrying this without the big money?
I have not been approached by anybody to offer me money other than a few individuals who are, friends, connections, locals, neighbors, people I know or who know people that I know. Every dollar in my campaign comes from a biological human being I can put a hand on and say thank you very much. I can't say that nobody ever will put money in my pocket or spend money on my behalf, but it's probably not going to come from major corporate interests who would much prefer somebody like Tracy Mann who will do what he is told every single time because he knows, that's what gets him reelected. What do I plan to do? Raise as much money as I can from those people because that's the only way we can fight the election. And people always tell me, boy, I wish money didn't have a place in politics. Buddy, so do I. More than you, I bet, because I'm the one who's got to spend 3 hours on the
Yeah.
phone every day calling people and begging for it. And it's not enough time. A professional politician these days needs to be spending 5 to 8 hours on the phone doing what they call time, which is just one call after the other. Can I have some money? 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 It's a pie eating contest. And the reward for winning is more pie.
Well,
You just have to keep doing it for the rest of your career.
yeah.
But it's what it takes to get the media out there. And so I drove 2 hours to be here for this event tonight, and I spent those 2 hours in the car calling people and saying, hey, I'm running for office. I could really use your support. Calling my campaign manager, getting the interns set up to do those calls for us too. We're going to raise as much as we can, and it's not going to be a tithe on what Tracy Mann has to spend. He's going to have millions of dollars. He has millions of dollars. He's a multi-millionaire. I work for a living. I live paycheck to paycheck like a lot of Americans. We're not going to outspend him. We can't do that. All we can do is speak the truth and hope the truth spreads on its own because we can't afford to do it for people.
I like that. I like that response. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayana.
Thank you.
We have another question from Mr. Scott McLaughlin. He was wondering, was there some gerrymandering there?
Oh, absolutely. So the first district used to be kind of just the western half of the state, and they cut in Lawrence, which is a big college town, big by Kansas standards at least, to kind of drown it out so the blue votes wouldn't be turning some of the slightly more competitive districts too competitive for their taste. And the idea was that Lawrence isn't nearly big enough to make a difference to the very red first district. And they were probably right. They certainly were in 24, but they won't be in 26. That blue wave, plus just the general movement of people, the demography, and the lack of the performance on the incumbent is going to make a huge difference. And so we're going to see, I think, Lawrence making a huge difference, which is one reason why the GOP is trying to gerrymander again. They now want to take Lawrence maybe out of the first district because they're seeing they maybe made a mistake, and they want to take Sharice Davids out of the third district where she keeps winning despite the gerrymandering they're doing to try and shut her down. So we'll see what happens. And what I've been telling people is I'm one of the only Democrats in Kansas who would be helped by gerrymandering. because what they're going to do is they're going to take some red seeds out of my district to put them into other districts to shore them up, which makes the first district slightly bluer. It would probably help me, but I'm still opposed to it because it's wrong. Gerrymandering for pure partisan reasons is corrosive, it's corruptive, it destroys democratic government, small d democratic, and doing it in the middle of a census cycle is just filthy. And it really is something we all should all be standing up to oppose, at least when it's done for pure partisan advantage. Maybe I'm biased. I have less of a problem with it when it's something like California being done explicitly to balance out what Texas is doing for a limited period of time than going back to a nonpartisan system. I've got a lot more tolerance for that, but just the naked partisanship of Texas and Kansas and some of the other states trying to gerrymander now mid-cycle is deeply disturbing.
Very disturbing. And we're going to move to environment and infrastructure, which is one of my other favorite ones. I have so many favorite subjects. So communities and farmers in Western Kansas are facing declining water levels in the, I'm not even gonna try it, but it starts with an O. OGA was an yeah.
Ogallala Aquifer.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. I was not gonna mess it up. And it's threatening long-term agriculture and local drinking water supplies. What solutions would you support to protect our water, to protect your or their water supplies, resources, while keeping terms in rural communities economically strong?
There are hundreds of people, probably not more than a few miles from me right now, who spent their entire careers trying to answer that question. There is no single good answer to it. And it's been a question that's been a hard question for a long time. I grew up in West Texas as a kid on the far southern end of the Ogallala Aquifer. And people were talking about it back then in the 80s, what a big problem this is going to be in the future. Well, now it's the future. And it's a big problem because it's just draining. We've got a handle on it. It's draining slower than it used to because we've gotten better at managing those water supplies, gotten better at managing the crops that are thirsty, that need the water. But it's not just crops, it's the towns, it's the people. People drink, animals drink, and it's the cattle in a large part are kind of driving some of that water usage. But that's the economy. That's what people do. And so there's no easy answer to this. What I come back to more than anything else, again, is this is the research that is being done in Kansas universities to improve the productivity of dryland crops, to improve conservation, to improve the utilization of resources. And that's the research that's dying on the vine now because the grants are being shut down for purely political reasons, when it's the thing that red Kansas voters need more than anything else as an answer to this problem. And it's not a question that politicians can answer. It's a question that farmers have to answer, that ranchers have to answer, and they answer it with the assistance of that technology and the assistance of those management strategies that come from the universities in partnership with the land users.
Yeah, it's something else. Like, it's everybody's drinking water. Birds need it. People need it. Livestock need it. The ground needs it. It's just sickening how people just, we're just going to throw this in the water. It'll wash away. No, it will not. It won't. It don't work that way. Another question would be, many counties in the district have deteriorating rural roads and aging bridges that slow down farm transport, school buses, and emergency vehicles. What federal investments or programs would you champion to repair and modernize this critical infrastructure?
Infrastructure grants, easy answer. It's something everybody knows needs to happen. Nobody wants to spend the money. I mean, in his first term, God, every other week, Donald Trump would say, this is infrastructure week, and it would be some horrendous scandal that had nothing to do with infrastructure, just trying to distract. No, we've got to actually do it. We've got to actually spend that money because it is what pays off in the long run. Infrastructure spending is one of those categories of federal spending that has a positive economic impact more than almost anything else down the road, but keeping businesses going, keeping farms going, keeping highways moving. And so we can spend that money and not worry too much about the long-term, cost of it, because it pays for itself in the long run by improving that just survivability of the grid of roads and networks in Western Kansas and the rest of the country. I mean, I'm talking too much, but that's
No,
it.
you're not. You're not.
Do it.
I'm hearing the
And again, we do
feedback.
it
They
partly
love
by reducing
it.
the cost of it. Kill the tariffs, make it cheaper to buy the steel, make it cheaper to buy the aluminum, make it cheaper to maintain those things by reducing the cost of them in the first place. We're right now hitting that infrastructure with a double whammy of both making the maintenance more expensive and taking away the money that's needed for that maintenance. And so we're going to see more deferred maintenance crises coming up.
Absolutely. No, they love your answers. They love it. I love it too because it's like I'm actually speaking to somebody who actually get it. We're getting a lot of candidates that actually speak like you, that tell like it is. It's time to be honest, with people, and we really appreciate it. One last question. Excuse me. In this category, farmers in small towns and district continue to face damage from drought, wildfires, severe storms, and flooding. What policies would you pursue to help communities strengthen their infrastructure, improve disaster response, and reduce the impact of extreme weather events?
The easy answer, again, is federal grants and provide spending to support the programs that already exist. The deeper answer that goes further is to say climate change is real. It's happening, it has an impact, and we have to acknowledge that. And we still see too many politicians just digging into the ideology of 20, 30, 50 years ago, insisting they can live in a fantasy world where they don't have to worry about changes to the climate. And the impact is they resist any effort to find solutions. And we're seeing that again in the killing of research to deal with the impacts of climate change, because political appointees see that change, the term climate change, and think that's carte blanche to kill the grant, because it has been in this administration. No, we need to acknowledge that's a real problem that needs real solutions, and those solutions, again, come from science. We support science spending because that's one of the things we can do to understand what those changes are going to look like in the future, so we can start to adapt to them before it's a crisis.
Absolutely. We finished that category. My other category is local issues and constituent focus. Many residents in the first district feel concerns go unheard because town halls are rare and calls to congressional offices often go unanswered. What steps would you take to ensure consistent, transparent communication and regular in-person engagement with constituents across such a large rural district?
It's large, but it's not infinite, right? You can hit every county in western Kansas in the first district, and the incumbent definitely could, but I talk to a lot of people who know that Tracy Mann is their congressman, have never met him, never expect to meet him, and probably never will because he's stopped having public events. And a lot of these guys stopped having public events, especially in Kansas, at the town hall I was at that convinced me to run for office in the first place, where our senator ran away, left halfway through his own town hall because somebody asked him a question about how bad Doge was. And he just clearly saw, you could see it on his face when he realized, I don't have to be here. I'm going to win my election no matter what these people think. And he just walked out because he didn't want to do this. That's inexcusable, but it was a lesson, I think, that Tracy Mann and the representatives on the GOP who just said, oh, I don't need to do that either. And you saw their events immediately disappear. I'll be doing a video later this week contrasting my event schedule to his. I've got a page full of events I'm going out to talk to people, meet people, and his page is completely empty. Not a single event scheduled. Because why would he hold an event where somebody might ask him a hard question if he thinks he gets reelected no matter what? Safe elections make weak politicians and useless politicians. So the commitment I've made is just to do this, do town halls, travel the state, meet people, talk to people, listen to people. And I'm trying to show that I'm credible when I say that by making sure my events, as much as I can, are reaching out to Republicans, reaching out to ag centers, not just talking to Democrats, not just talking to my own party, showing that I'm open to hear from everybody, whether they agree with me or not. I teach college for a living. I am used to people yelling at me. I'm used to people having a problem with what I'm saying. I'm used to that argument, that discussion, that debate. I love it. I want to see it. That's what I'm offering as a politician. It's what the incumbent will never offer, because his path to power is not reaching out to his constituents. It's reaching out to party leaders behind closed doors. That's how he gets reelected.
And you would think that him being a human being, or he has children or grandchildren, like, come on. If your child was to ask you this, was to ask the person who was running, like switch the roles around. Like, how would he feel if he had the same question and the guy's like, forget this, I'm out of here. Like, what? Yeah. Like, who does that?
It should be a shame that follows him for the rest of his life. But, he's probably right. He probably will get reelected just on the numbers if partisanship continues, if people vote just according to their partisan lines. That's the message we've got to spread is, no, you can have something different. You've just got to vote different.
Right.
You got to do something a little bit different to get there. And that's the message we're bringing out to Kansas.
Yeah, the insensitivity is so real. It's really real, and it's disgusting. Another question is several small towns in the district are losing population, leading to fewer local services, fewer jobs, and shrinking school funding. What is your plan to help these communities stay vibrant and ensure they aren't left behind as larger city grows?
There are a lot of reasons for that population shift. One of them, like I talked about earlier, is consolidation of the farms. And so supporting local family farms is one way to fight against that, because a lot of family farms in one area will employ more people than one big corporate operation, which means you have more people in that district, and people attract people. You've got then restaurants, you've got businesses, shops, you've got hospitals and schools. The next step is protect those hospitals, protect those schools, protect those libraries, make sure the services are there, because towns will die without those services. It's both a cause and an effect. But then beyond that, and this is, again, one of those things that I think is going to make it hard for me to connect with the really conservative voters in Kansas, but my job is to say the true thing, whether it's politically convenient or not. Immigration is an answer to some of those questions, some of those problems, because like I tell a lot of Kansans, like, what are our problems right now? It's not overpopulation. It's not too many customers for our businesses. It's not too many people in line at the restaurant. Underpopulation is our problem. And so a rational, sane, healthy, legal immigration system that's bringing in experts, bringing in people who have a lot of value to offer to the community, just bringing in people who are good people would do a huge amount to make Kansas communities healthy and profitable and safe and vibrant. And that's one thing that the federal government can do, is just restore that immigration bipartisan reform that was being proposed in 24 before the election, that would open up massive new legal channels to immigration, so we could get an immigration system that Republicans were agreeing on. They wanted before the president decided he wanted immigration crisis as an issue to run on as a platform for the campaign. We can get back to that, but it's going to take commitment from politicians on the left and the right to find that bipartisan compromise.
Absolutely. Residents in rural counties often struggle to access federal services like the VA support, Social Security assistance, or USDA programs because the nearest office may be hours away. How would you make it easier for constituents in remote areas to get the federal help they qualify for?
Destroy DOJ. Easy. Destroy it, root it out. It's done so much damage to these federal programs that are such a valuable part of our inheritance, our process, our system as Americans is this beautiful thing we've built that does so much good. And I understand it's expensive, I understand it's complicated, but it does so much in such a complicated environment, this federal system. And it's been torn up by the roots by people who have no idea what they're doing and don't care to learn and aren't trying to do it in a rational or a smart way. One of the ways we can restore some of that damage is simply destroy the system that's burning it down and pull out the arsonists and say, this is wrong, this is unhelpful, this is the exact wrong thing to do in these circumstances, and start to rebuild those departments, rebuild those agencies, because they have to be rebuilt. We're not going to have AI providing veteran services. It just doesn't work that well. We need human beings at the other end of those phones, which means we need to hire those people back, and frankly, with an apology for the disrespect they suffered at the hands of just arsonists in the federal government.
Absolutely. And one last question in that category. Different parts of this district have different needs. Some prioritize water access. Others need hospital funding. Others want broadband or farm support programs. How would you tailor your work in Congress to ensure each community's unique concerns are understood and addressed?
I've got to do what the incumbent won't do and just go out and talk to people, listen to them. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, unaffiliated. In Kansas, Democrats are the third largest political group after Republicans and unaffiliated. So I've got a lot of people to listen to who don't share my party, maybe not share my beliefs, but I've got to learn from them what they think is necessary for their community, work with them to build those solutions. And I'm already doing it. I've got meetings set up with experts in the rural water systems in the far western part of the district who know things I have no idea how to solve the problems they're facing. They're going to teach me. They're going to tell me what they need, and I'm going to take those answers into my campaign because that's the job of a politician, as opposed to what the incumbent is doing, which is listening to what party leaders tell him to do and stopping there and going home for a nap and to cash in checks, because that's the only thing that gets them reelected. Now, what we should be doing is listening to those local leaders, hearing their needs, hearing their solutions, and working to integrate them into federal policy.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to economic and development. I have this one question. Several communities in western and central Kansas report that economic growth is being held back because workers cannot find affordable housing near job sites. So what steps will you take to encourage new housing development so businesses can grow and workers can stay in the community?
People are surprised sometimes this is a problem because they think that expensive housing is mostly a thing in, New York and Boston and
Right,
California.
right,
No,
yes.
everywhere. Housing is expensive everywhere. The rent is too damn high every place in the country. And there's a couple of things we can do about it. The first, the easiest, the most important is destroy the chaotic tariff system that is making the building materials more expensive, and then build more housing. It's that simple. We can talk about all these other more complicated solutions, but the fundamental problem is the supply is too low. We build more housing, and we make it possible to build more housing by lowering the cost of building housing. And we do that both by ending the tariffs that make the materials more expensive and by reforming the immigration system to bring in construction crews that were willing to do the work and are building those communities at the same time. So more supply, more supply, more supply. Listen, I'm a centrist. I'm a markets guy. So I'm not going to stand here and say, especially in Kansas, rent control is the solution. It's just not going to happen. I'm a markets guy. And we build a market for housing, for affordable housing, by increasing the supply. More building, more economic activity. That's the answer.
That is so awesome. Thank you for answering these important questions, important categories. So now we're going to make it fun before you leave. We have this thing called a pulse check. So I know your pulse is running high. I don't need for you to check that already because I know I didn't have you on point. So this is just for fun. It's to break the ice even more. Coffee or sweet tea?
First of all, I'm going to say sweet tea is wrong. It's the devil. I grew up in the South, but not the South. Tea should be unsweetened. That's how I was raised. The only way to do it. Other than that, I'm going to say coffee. I drink way too much coffee on a daily basis. You can probably tell. I drove 2 hours to be here, and I was just pulling down a large mocha the whole way.
Oh, wow.
I made another one on my way home.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have to give you that one. Kansas City barbecue.
I see people in the chat saying that sweet tea is the only way. I'm sorry. It's on site. You're just wrong about that. It's wrong. No, it's a moral issue. Tea shouldn't be sweet. Tea should be just iced. That's it. It's not politically convenient. I just got to speak the truth.
You
That's
like-
what it is.
But Mel, you have to come up here with me. So Kansas City barbecue or Texas barbecue?
I mean, I don't
You're
even
gonna get me
live in
fired from
Kansas.
Kansas.
I don't even live in Kansas, but you lost my vote because that's all I drink every day is sweet tea. Like I don't even drink sodas anymore. I only drink sweet tea. Hot tea.
What are you
needs to be
sweetening it
sweet.
with?
That depends.
I mean, if we're talking about like molasses, I respect that. At least you've got your tradition there. You've got agricultural products there, important for politicians. But no,
Regular
just a
soda.
giant unsweet tea is just the most moral thing a person can drink, other than coffee and way too much of it. But in all seriousness,
Have you ever tasted unsweet tea?
all the time. Other than coffee, other than coffee and Dr. Pepper.
And I'm gonna assume you drink your coffee black.
Oh God, no! I put so much milk and sugar into it. Coffee, you can adulterate.
Okay, you want it back. You want it back because I'm with you on that.
I squeeze chocolate into it whenever chance I get. It's my thing.
Wow.
Well, this is my suggestion, sir, that you do not tell these country folks that sweet tea
He's the devil.
I'm just glad I don't have to answer the barbecue question because that's the hard one.
Okay. Oh well. Alice in the comments says, "Let him finish the barbecue question. Kansas City barbecue or Texas barbecue? Choose right."
See, that question is perfect because I get to say I am in the first district. I'm in Western Kansas. Kansas City is too far east. No. Too much sauce. Texas, whole different state. I grew up in Texas. I got love in my heart for Texas, but Texas went crazy at some point. And, I'm going to say this. I'm going to do the political thing and split the difference. Texas does amazing brisket. Nobody does brisket like Texas does, especially no sauce. Just a dry brisket in the sense of no sauce, not like dry meat. But you want something other than brisket, you got to go to Kansas for that because you want better ribs, you want better sausage, you want burnt ends. Texas just does not do good burnt ends in the same way. Kansas is that. And the best place to go, I'm going to say it's not Kansas City because you're just going to get, a big restaurant there. You want to go to a gas station, you want to go to a pit, you want to go to somebody's backyard, you want to go someplace small and a little bit crusty, but it's going to be good barbecue because that pit's been around for a long time.
So Z asked, is it tender? Is the brisket?
Unless it's too dry, in which case, it's going to be like sandwich meat and you can do something with it. It's not nothing. But no, I like my brisket a little bit wet in the sense of, a lot of fat on it.
Yes.
It's not good for you, but it's barbecue. It's not going to be.
So what about sunflower fields or wheat fields?
Wheat. I like the look of sunflower, but there's just something about the waving wheat fields. It's in my heart. It's the kind of the alma mater of KU is waving the wheat, and it's moral, right? It's the right thing to see out your window. It's what you want to see every day. And it's not really the wheat fields, but when I drive into my district, I'm driving through the Flint Hills, and it's just those big Kansas vistas, those big open pastures. God, it makes you feel good.
Oh, Jayhawks, Wildcats, or are you staying neutral?
Those are the two big universities in my district. I can't answer that. I will say I look forward every year to the rivalry game between them, even though, it usually does not go in my employer's favor, just because, God, I love trash talk. I love a rivalry. And I love it. I went to go talk to the young Dems at K-State, the Wildcats, to get some volunteers, some interns in my campaign. Had this fantastic meeting with them, and this was a few days before the big rivalry game. And they apologized and said, "Listen, I'm sorry, we still have to go on with our regular meetings. Thank you very much for talking to us about the campaign." Now, and they flip up the big slide for their plans for the game week, and it's these AI images of a sad Jayhawk drinking alone in a bar, getting beaten up in the game and losing everything. And it's the trash talk. And I love it. And I think, fantastic. Good for you.
Oh, my goodness. So what's your go-to road trip snack crossing Western Kansas?
Mocha, big sweet coffee with chocolate in it, and maybe some peanuts. But honestly, if I'm being real honest, probably peanut butter cups.
Okay. Country music, classic rock, or hip hop?
Classic rock.
Okay.
I'm a Tom Petty guy. My musical taste stopped evolving in college. It is what it is.
Oh,
my wife was much more hip hop. And so when we're driving together, she's got better taste than I do. So we listen to a lot of classic hip hop, especially. Huge Wu-Tang fan. And then, my kid is now super into Fall Out Boy. So a lot of Fall Out Boy. And we just kind of ping pong around. The one thing everybody in the family can agree on is everybody has better taste than I do. So I don't get control of the radio very often.
Oh my goodness. If anybody doesn't have any more questions for Mr. Colin, oh my goodness, it's been a blast. It's been such a blast doing this with you. If elected, what is the single most important change you hope the people of Kansas, I'm about to say Texas, Kansas First District will see after your first term in Congress?
People over parties. Don't vote for a party. The party is nothing. The party is an organization of people. Look at the people. Are the people doing the right thing? Are the people honest? Are the people ethical? Are the people caring about their community? Or are the people just serving the party? That's it. We break the party system by focusing on the people underneath the party and voting on who is doing the job the best for the district.
That's awesome. In Kansas, First District covers a huge geographic area with many diverse needs. How will you ensure every community, large or small, feels represented and heard under your leadership?
By hearing them, by talking to them, by being in their neighborhood, by holding a town hall, physically if I can, online if I can't. You're showing us how easy it can be and how inexcusable it is that incumbents aren't doing it right now all over the country. And they're not doing it because they count on that safe election, and they count on that safe election because of partisanship. So that's what we're fighting, is partisanship. And so we hear the people, again, focusing on who they are, not the party, not who they support, not what they want, the people. What do they need? What can they teach us?
Absolutely. The other question is how your district includes voters with many different viewpoints. How do you plan to work across party lines and bring people together to deliver real results for Kansas?
I mean, like I said, Democrats are the third biggest group in my district after Republicans and unaffiliated. And so the only way to win is explicitly by working with people across party lines, which is why when I'm scheduling events, my highest priority is go talk to Republicans, go talk to business people, go talk to those groups that aren't going to be natural supporters of the Democrats, because that's how it has to work. That's the fundamental necessity. And again, it's listening to them, it's talking to them. My personal approach and what makes me, I think, the strongest candidate in this race by a long shot is my business background. I mean, I talk to people about what works empirically, what's effective, what's successful, what keeps communities profitable, what keeps that money coming into the community. And everybody can agree, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, unaffiliated, whatever, crazy other party somebody might belong to, everybody can look at the world today and say, this is unaffordable. This is not working. And there are market solutions, business solutions we can agree on across party lines as long as we prioritize our communities over our parties.
And one last question for voters who are still undecided. I don't know why, but what is the most important thing you want them to know about why you're the right person to represent this district?
Good political hair. No, it's
awesome.
Because I care, right? I'm not a rich guy who's running for fun. It's not an ego project. I am sacrificing a huge amount to get into this race because I care about the right thing to do. I want accountability for the incompetence and corruption in government right now. I want secure, stable, profitable communities. I want businesses that work. I want to step up and do something in the 2 years I'm going to get before the district becomes unwinnable again outside of a wave year. And we can do that to make this district competitive again. My business background, my negotiation background, and the fact that I can talk to Republicans and Democrats and everybody else makes me far and away the choice for this district at this time.
Wow, absolutely. People are loving it. People are loving you in the comments. So, Mr. Colin McRoberts, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So, for any final words? What's your message to voters as we head toward the primary election day, and how can people support you in this campaign?
Talk about me, talk about the issues. We can't afford the advertising that's going to put my name on people's lips all over the district, all over the country, so you can do it. Talk to people around you that you care about, who care about you, about the things that bother you, the things you're concerned about, the solutions you see. Tell them what you want to see in a politician, the politicians you like. Just talk. Live, in person, online, whatever works for you. Help carry that message, because money is only a thing in politics because we use it as a substitute for people's voices. Stand up, talk, spread the message, spread the links, do what you can to support that message, because that's what's going to make a difference in the long run. Amazing.
So we invite you, Mr. Colin McRoberts, if you have time, because we have another town hall tonight, and that's with Miss Lauren Collin. It's a different switcheroo here. So her last name is Collin. First name is Lauren. She is representing California, U.S. House Representative District 34. That's at 9:00 Eastern Time. If you have time to join us, then. We also have another one tomorrow. At 7:00 Eastern. The person is William Marks. who is running in Texas, U.S. Congressional District 25, at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So if you have any time to spend with us, you're more than welcome. And also, we have a thing called a round table where various prestigious people like you who are running for different offices come together and they speak amongst themselves and to the people in the chat about different subjects, different important areas that people are concerned with. Please give me a time, people. I think it's on Sundays at 4 o'clock. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in our vote counts. So you can come by there as well and just join in the conversation. Join in conversation. But it's at 3 p.m. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday. Thank you. So next Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. December 21st. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Mr. Colin. Any last words you want to say before we close out?
Thank you so much for what you're doing. I mean, this is how people can reach voters other than just being rich and having all the money in the world to buy advertising, is efforts like this. So I love what you're doing. I really appreciate it, and keep doing it forever.
Amazing. Thank you. So I have one more question. Do you represent the Kansas City Chiefs in the football?
I mean, everybody loves the Chiefs, right? But they're outside my district, but I know you do. I know you do. I see it in your eyes. Taylor Swift, right? How can you not?
Oh, that's another subject. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Collins. So our vote counts, OVC. I thank you so much to the people who made this happen. OVC, you are the best. You are amazing. OVC is a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity like Mr. Colin McRoberts here, and ensure every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we're building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. So join us, and remember, your vote is your power. Remember that. Thank you so much, everybody. You all have a blessed night. Thank you, Mr. Collins, and you all take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.